This is the Henry's Child Podcast. Am I crazy? Or am I just raving?
So I got a good question you could probably ask me right off the bat. It's just the Henry's Child stories. And
Yeah, go for it, man.
So are we recording?
Yeah, we're recording now. I'm just kind of getting some levels.
Oh, okay. All right. Henry's Child stories.
Yeah.
So the big one, the one I hinted at, was the ghost story one. And do you remember Lenora's Ghost, that bar in Monmouth?
Yes, I do.
Or not Monmouth, whatever it's called, Independence. So that place was supposedly haunted. And I'm there with my girlfriend at the time, Kathy, and Scott, the owner, is showing us the upstairs and telling us all these haunted stories. There was this weird area in the center of the building that was empty. It was like a courtyard, but it went up all 3-4 stories. I mean, it was just this big empty, and I guess it's for like heating and cooling or something for air circulation, which is what they did back then because it's like a over 100-year-old building or something.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was a really old place.
So he's showing us that area, and he's telling us these ghost stories, and you guys were going to play that night, and you guys were banging on stuff downstairs or something, and so Kathy's right in back of Scott and I, and he's showing us the center courtyard, and we heard this girl say something, so we look back, and we look back, and Kathy's looking back too. And we go, did you just say something? And she goes, no, I thought I just heard someone say something. And we're going, holy crap. And Scott goes, well, there's another one. You're referring to another ghost story.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, holy crap, no way. But, I don't believe in ghosts, so I don't really buy this. But I think what it might have been was maybe Andy or Rich doing a mic test downstairs. And it just sounded like a chick or something,
Oh, sure, that could have been it.
And
reverberating off of the back or something.
Yeah. So I don't know, but that's my explanation. That's the only ghost-like experiencing that I think I can't explain. So
that's kind of the ghost of Henry's Child.
Yeah, maybe you guys are haunting the place.
You know what was weird about that show? I remember that show because Rich had a major freak out because Wes, our light guy at the time, he had brought in his head, like his amplifier head, from the van that we were in, and Rich couldn't get any sound out of it. And we're like, oh, what the heck is going on? And we need to go kind of get some other thing and something like that. And he had actually plugged the input to the output at the same time. It was kind of like the classic, like, I'm a newbie sort of thing. And so we ended up figuring it out and fixing it, and we're able to play the show. Ghosts and all.
Funky. Yeah, that was a wacky place. Had some great pizza.
We were in another. So Rich. So I realize it's been a few years since I've seen you. Rich and I never quit playing in other. We had other bands. We went on and kind of did a punk rock band kind of a thing. Did a prog rock kind of a thing, and then Henry's Child kind of accidentally got back together in 2014.
Oh, okay.
It was kind of it was for another show. We ended up kind of talking to Doug, seeing if he would be able to come back in and play. Yeah, we ended up just kind of doing it, and then we recorded an entire album, and it was a trip because the reality is we didn't know what was going to happen. So we booked the show, and kind of at the last minute we changed it to Henry's Child, learned like 10 songs, realizing that how really simple they were from back in the day, because we had developed in doing all these other bands and projects were a little more difficult. Musically, that's what I'm talking about. Dude, we've just kept it together. Fast forward a couple years, and we opened for Floater last Thursday.
Funky.
500 people.
Yeah, I wish I could have been the Dantes, but I don't like Dantes.
Dantes was okay. It was good. It was good. It was interesting. We were with a national act that I had never seen before. It was a good show. It was a good show all around. We played middle slot, and there were a fair amount of people there.
Oh, yeah, and so other couple of Henry's Child stories. It was your old bass player, Chris, did you say his name was? Mm-hmm. Okay. I was staying at his house down there in Eugene or Springfield, I think it was, and like early 90s. I wound up super hungover. I woke up like really early, and The Simpsons was on, and he's actually the one that got me into The Simpsons. I'd never really been into The Simpsons.
Really?
Before. Yeah.
Wow.
And I eventually got tired of it, but that's kind of interesting. So it's kind of Chris's fault. I got into them for a few years.
Nice.
And then what was the other one? Oh yeah. So there was a sort of heart-wrenching moment that I had when I wrote about you guys for Eugene Weekly. And you informed me that I guess Andy quit the band at the time, but my memory's faulty and all this is like 20 years ago now. So, but I remember writing about it. I think I was talking to Rich, and he was being really upbeat and about the new singer and saying how nice it was to have a new singer. And I remember writing that, just going, "Oh, I feel like crap. I feel like I'm taking a crap on Andy, you know." But for some reason I thought he had been ousted out of the band and he didn't quit. I think that was my impression then. And so I felt like I was just crapping on him. So apologies, Andy, if that upset you to read that, but maybe it didn't at the time. I had to do my job. You know, I was like a reporter. I got to report what got said.
Yeah, there you go, man.
And
well, there you go. Completeness and full circle. So closed loop feedback is closed now.
Yeah.
Now Andy quit the first go around. Would have been February of '98. Unless somebody was really to follow the band, I mean, we did a lot of crap in that year and a half since then. So we had got Rex Morningstar came and sang for us. We went on tour with Rex. We cut an album with Rex called Learning Too Much. Never got released. So we never actually mixed it. It remains unmixed. And then Rex quit. And then we met Andy Macon from the UK. This is like late 98, early 99. So barely email, took a few minutes just to get going. And
right.
I mean, gosh, man, he flew over here. We cut a whole album in less than 3 months, and we couldn't afford to keep him. That was the thing. Like, so the price, even the immigration attorney, like even just the price of admission was like, I think it was like $2,700. And I was like, oh man. And she's like, I can't even guarantee it. Like, you have to prove he has a job and all this stuff. I'm like, now it's all complicated and stuff. And so
I think I remember something about that.
Yep, that was the thing. And our only show with Andy Macon was at Tommy John's.
Good old Tommy John's.
In the death throes of 1999. I mean, I think it's a coffee house now. I think it's an Allman Brothers.
I don't know.
Up in Salem. I get confused at the downtown area.
I have no clue what it is now.
So what about you? How long were you in Salem for?
I left in 2001. Or no, 2000, late 2000.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, September 2000. Never looked back. I was so glad to get out of that town. Oh my God. I swear to God, for the first 6-7 years, I think I thought about it almost every day, how glad I was to get out. And finally, after about 7 years, I didn't think about it every day. But it took a while. It took quite a while. I think it took me, I was living part-time in Newport for a while in like 2006. And I think that's when I finally stopped thinking about Salem, because I was living in both Portland and Newport at the time.
That's quite a commute, man.
It was.
Wow.
But it was fun. I got to live best of both worlds, the cool restaurants up here and then, the fun of the beach down in Newport. So
when you moved from Salem, you moved to kind of a double residency between...
No, I moved to Portland.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, and it wasn't until like 6 years later or something that I was living part-time. It was for like 3-4 months that I lived part-time in Newport. And then the rest of the time I kind of lived part-time in Manzanita until, a few years ago. And
what took you to Manzanita, man?
I love it.
Yeah.
It's the coolest little place. I just had lots of friends there, and a guy let me, stay in one of his hotel rooms for next to nothing, so I was kind of living out of there sometimes.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Manzanita's a trip. We have a neighbor on our block that her father bought a house sort of with the future intention to kind of rent it out, either like an Airbnb or whatever. Because Manzanita has so many laws kind of surrounding rentals and what is sort of going to be available, he has this kind of, sort of this purgatory time as he sort of applies, and then a certain percentage of the houses are rentals, and certain percentage of the houses are people that live in Manzanita. Mm-hmm. We've been able to go down and like kick it for like an entire week at a time.
Nice. And
it's been really great.
Oh,
it's just so nice. It's private. I like it. But here's the thing, like, because we were kind of already sort of familiar with the coast, and like you said, Manzanita in your emails, I was like, okay, this guy's been around. He knows what's up. Yeah, it's a great little town, man.
It is. It's everybody always asks me what my favorite part of the coast is. Tell them, well, it depends on the criteria, but I guess my favorite little town is Manzanita, and
cool.
It's just kind of home.
Well, let's go back to the Newport thing, because there's another commonality that we have, and it didn't dawn on me until later on, like 15 years later, about the commonality of Rob Thornton, is it, that owned Cape Fear. Okay, because he had kind of kind of dared me over Facebook, where he had pulled out kind of the ruffled up old school Henry's Child shirt. And I'm like, man, I swear I've got a Cape Fear shirt upstairs. And my daughter had gone through and taken all these old, she has like Elemental Records shirts and Thresher shirts and old Jollymon shirts she wears. And one of them was a Cape Fear shirt that like, it's one of those like, now that I'm kind of in my mid 40s, I'm kind of afraid to put it on because like the belly will stick out more. But then I totally one-upped him. I mean, I just took a picture of it, and I'm like, here you go, Rob, and stuff. And you say he lives in Portland now too, huh?
Yeah. I haven't seen him in quite a few years, but when I was living part-time in Newport, he was still down there, and we were bumping into each other a lot. And then saw him a few times up here in Portland. We went to the Trailer Park Boys show a few years back, and that was fun. We had a blast.
Nice.
Yeah.
I guess maybe I need to respect the people listening to this and step back for just a second. What I'm mentioning is the owner of a club that was in Newport called Cape Fear. And it was kind of during the time where Henry's Child had started playing West Side, was doing really, really well at West Side Station, had just broken through the Wow Hall to where they were able to let us have headlining shows. And we played almost every weekend. And one of the places that we started to include in this, because I remember 3 or 4 distinct shows. In fact, I even have the posters over in my office right over across the hallway from here for Cape Fear. It was kind of a small place. And it was one of those things that I was really impressed with that he had even brought to Newport, because at the time, so again, like 96, 97 probably was around the time that this was happening. So he would have live shows with bands and all kinds of stuff, punk rock bands, metal bands, rock bands, whatever. And then there would be sort of like this sort of disco, what did we call it back then? Techno, I guess, maybe would have been the term, before EDM came along and splintered off into 200 different sub-niched categories. And then I had heard or seen kind of over Facebook that Andre knew Rob, and that Rob was even living in Portland. So I was like, oh, that's kind of a trip.
Yeah.
That's a good venue, though, man.
The Cape Fear days were kind of what helped me get sucked into the coast. It was only around for a year, and I think I came in like in the last half of that year or something on it. And I was covering nightlife for the Statesman Journal at the time. And so I figured, Newport is kind of close to Salem, so I should probably be covering this. So I would, once a month, I'd go out there and hit up one of those shows and spend the night out there. And then, of course, it was underage, so you couldn't drink there. So I'd go to the crummy little bar up the street, Moby Dick's, which I just found an old picture of it. I can't believe I found it, of what it used to look like before it expanded. And it was this crummy little hole in the wall, absolute dive. Absolutely the cheapest drinks in the whole damn state. I couldn't believe it. It was like, I bought like Robert, his uncle, and me, and somebody else around. It was like 4 of us, and it was like less than $10 or something. It was like, what? And it was just insanely cheap, and you would get drunk off your ass. And those were fun days. That little bar was great. But anyway, that was what kind of got me sucked in the coast. And then after Cape Fear folded, I was going, I get cranky if I don't go out to the coast every month. And so I started going out there every month. And then like in 98 or 99, I decided I was going to, I had this idea for a book. This is when I got the idea for the books about the coast. I decided then to start documenting every single beach spot along the upper half of the coast. And the idea was I was going to put out a whole book of this, of every single beach access, and then some guy beat me to it in 2000, and I was crushed, and the book ideas faded away, and at that time I was also editor of this thing called Oregon Coast Guide, as well as living in Portland and writing for KXR Radio. 2006 is when I started Oregon Coast Beach Connection, beachconnection.net, which is what I'm doing now, and now finally the books have come back into my life again, but I've splintered them off into a bunch of little books. So anyway, Cape Fear, you can trace all that to Cape Fear, kind of, is what I'm saying.
Wow. No, that's cool. That's cool. So we had a little bit of the seeds that were planted there, and that's great. So I noticed, too, on your email that you have a bunch of PR, the links for different things kind of in your signature.
Yeah.
Do you do PR for different things now?
Well, I basically run 2 different companies, Beach Connection and then, I guess technically more than that. But there's these other little websites, indierocknews.net, OregonTravelDaily.com, TravelParanormal.com, and None of which are really doing anything. I'm not really messing with those. But I do have another business called PR Monster, where I do publicity for various entities, and was doing it for Newport, actually for the Newport Chamber for the last 12, 13 years. Yeah, so PR Monster. And then before that, I was doing PR for like Halem Bay Winery and Seaside and the Night Beach Business Association. And
so what does it look like? Do you just like write reviews for places?
No,
or?
I just write press releases for them and
Okay.
get them publicity. And last 2-3 years have been incredible, actually, for Newport.
So so let's talk about the books, actually. Did you release them only on Amazon?
Yeah, but they are available in some bookstores now. Beach Books up in Seaside, bookstore in Cannon Beach. I can't remember the name of it.
I only know two in Cannon Beach. One is Juniper's, which is the old school used bookstore.
Yeah,
and
it's
then
that
there's the new one.
Yeah, there's the
one
older
that sells new stuff.
Jupiter bookstore.
Jupiter's, that's what it is.
Yeah,
not
no, it's
Juniper's.
Jupiter. Yeah, and they're also available at the Seaside Aquarium, and they should be available in. I know they're available in other stores, but I'm not sure what, because I know people have been buying them. But they're basically, it's a self-publishing thing. You publish them on and get them printed on Amazon.
So are they POD? Like, can we do print on demand? Is
yeah.
that sort of what it is? Okay.
Yeah, and some of that's about to change. I'm about to go through somebody else so I can actually start getting into like Borders, or not Borders. God, I always want to say Borders. They've been. That's funny. That was a '90s thing.
That was a Freudian slip right there.
Powell's. I always want to say Borders instead of Powell's, because I did a lot of coverage of Borders books back in the '90s when I was writing for the Statesman. Yeah, hopefully into Barnes and Noble. That's things like Barnes and Noble and Powell's. I should be able to do that soon.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll see. But so yeah,
I mean, it's a good choice for sure. I mean, as opposed to maybe trying to go out and find a publisher, which is this kind of this constant conversation that I have on this podcast and with just about anybody I can find that will talk to me about it is publishing, how to get things out there, the idea of curation versus distribution.
It's a bitch.
What distribution is. And, having a single conduit or a single funnel like Amazon is usually a pretty smart thing. We do have this constant conversation of like what it takes to kind of get it out there, and get people to review it. So reviews become a really big part of it.
It's a huge learning experience, and I'm finding all these weird, dark, and kind of seedy corners of the publishing biz, especially when you're a self-publisher. I start looking up websites for people that will review your book, but none of these that review books will do it for free. You actually have to pay to get reviewed, which is cheesy. And there's one in Portland that does that. I'm like, no, that just doesn't feel right. That's not the way that should work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the scary thing that goes along with it, because the first thing when you said that, paying for reviews, it occurred for me that Amazon, they hold the funnel. So if they don't like you and they turn you off, sorry, dude, see you tomorrow, kind of a thing. Like they'll just slice it off. And one of the things that I've heard in the past is if they do find out that there's fake reviews or fake whatever, not review. I'm trying to think of. There's kind of two assignments to it. There's like the star level of what
the reviews
is.
on Amazon you're talking about?
Yeah, reviews on Amazon, they'll just shut you down, man.
Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah.
And it's funny because like in music it's the exact same way. So there is this danger of if you end up pissing off Apple, they'll just take you off iTunes. They don't care.
Interesting.
That's why I've turned to podcasting, as it is truly, in my opinion, it is truly the last bastion of free speech that we have right now that's not held by a conduit. Now, yes, a lot of listeners, well, first off, you have to like Henry's Child to listen to this podcast. And then it's available on many, many different platforms, but Apple being one of them. And we get a lot of people who download through Apple Podcasts. And so there is that kind of that inherent danger that if they don't like what's going on, they'll just yank it.
Wow.
We kind of live in that way anyway, too. I mean, it's just like, think about when, you get a paycheck these days. I mean, you never get a real check. It's just numbers on a screen, man. It just it's just a completely different, and then it's like, numbers on your phone or whatever.
Right.
Maybe not in your case, but.
No, not in my case. I'm old and I don't have a cell phone. I'm around technology all the damn time. I don't want it with me when I'm walking around. I'm even carrying my laptop with me today. Yeah, so the books, there's only 3 of them out right now. There's going to be about 10. There's the Cannon Beach one, the Seaside one,
okay.
and then the Lincoln City, and then I think Newport's next. Not positive. Maybe Nehalem Bay. I think I'm kind of leaning towards Nehalem Bay. So that's the cities of Manzanita, Nehalem, Wheeler, and Rockaway Beach. And I guess Tillamook Bay would be in that book too. And there'll be one for Warrenton, Astoria, one for the Depot Bay area, and Yachts and Walport. And then there'll be one big compilation one at the end.
Oh, nice.
So we'll see how that goes. So I'll have, but basically the books are kind of the idea that I had originally, where I documented every single beach access. But in this case, because now I've got like 13 years of writing about or 18 years of writing about the coast behind me, and I'm taking a lot of the stuff that I wrote especially for Beach Connection, and so it's not just every single beach access, but all these articles that I've written about them, and some new stuff new research that I did into them, into their history, their geology, describing weird little secrets about the beaches, seasonal aspects of these beaches. So that's why every single book has got, all the books have every single beach access and a ton of information about each beach access, and just about general history about the area too. So
that's what I really liked about it. I mean, I even remembered Pixie Kitchen as a kid.
Yeah,
and so
you do.
Here,
Okay.
And so I mean, barely. Like, we lived in Eugene though, so it was quite a trek.
Wow.
For us coming up there, but yeah, the history part's really cool. I also really like the dirt nerd stuff too. The whole geology stuff is pretty cool.
That's my favorite part.
That kind of blew my mind. That whole volcano in Lincoln City.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh!
I know what blew me away about that was how high it was, because what Cascade Head now is, I think it's like 500 feet high or something like that, and it's basically the top of. There's all this ground that's filled up around it now, but originally it was underwater and it was like 1,000 to 2,000 feet high.
That's crazy.
That is insane.
That is crazy.
So that's the very tip of a 1,000, 2,000 foot high volcano, and all that stuff's been whittled away. I'm sure actually parts of the chunks of the top have been whittled away too. But yeah, and then the stuff that always blows me away is like in the Cannon Beach book especially. I'm talking about the areas around Hug Point and just south of Cannon Beach, Hug Point and Arch Cape, and all the weird little stuff that you can find underneath the sands there, and the red towers. Those are really fascinating. These weird. They only show up in winter. It just struck me how weird it is that I've gone from writing about music to all this geology stuff.
That's awesome, man.
I'm this just the last 25 years have been quite a ride. At Hug Point, when the sand levels get really, really low, you can sometimes find these what are called red towers, and they look like something out of like Dr. Seuss or an album cover from Yes. These weird reddish, oddball shapes that kind of. Well, they make you scratch your head like I just did, and then you also find those old ghost forests that are like 4,000 years old too, and those are cool.
Took me a while to figure out kind of what you were talking about in the book with those, and I'm all like, that's I've seen that, and a lot of it is secretly, well, not secretly, but I have a slight advantage in that we stayed at the same house and Nesquin for a while,
yeah.
So I've kind of seen that change. And
Those ghost forests, yeah.
Yeah, those are a trip. I mean, I didn't know what they were, but now after I read your book, I was like, holy crap, those are really old.
Yeah, those ones are only about 1,500 years old to about a little under 2,000 or something like that. But the ones at Arch Cape are really old. And then there's some 5,000-year-old ones along the coast, and I can't remember where those are. I would love to see those, but I think those are kind of inaccessible. I think there's a couple down on the south coast, which I've never been to. I only covered the upper half.
So what are the actual red arches
or red towers?
Red towers. What are they?
Well, they're basically conglomerations of oxidized sand. It's different materials that's sort of compacted. It's not just sand, but other like clay and other materials. I can't remember what else. I would have to look it up in the book because it's in the book. But,
yeah, right.
But they're basically just these materials that have compressed together and kind of cemented together, and then they get oxidized. They get that reddish color, and that all happens underneath the sands. And then when the sands reveal them, they aren't very sturdy, so they tend to destroy self-destruct within a week or two.
Yeah, not
They're not
very
around
long.
But they're really trippy shapes. I mean, they're just like, whoa. whoa, what is that?
I bet. Yeah, those are cool. I'm always surprised at what I find at the coast.
Yeah, me too.
So do you miss writing about music?
Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of hit a dead end with it a little more than 10 years ago. Yeah, about 2003. I was writing for the when I moved up here, started writing about music for the Oregonian. For a little while, I was writing for both them and the Statesman,
Oh, wow.
even though I technically quit the Statesman. And then they kind of brought me back and said, why don't you go ahead and write for us for a little bit? I go, okay. And then the economy got crappy about 2002, and then they had to let me go from the Statesman. And then, around that time, I did something I wasn't supposed to and got booted from the Oregonian.
Whoops.
Nothing major. It was just this was like some of the funnest times of my life. Was about 2001 to 2003. And I was working for KXL Radio at the time, like almost full time, and writing for them, and then also running Oregon Coast Guide, this publication out on the coast, and writing for a few other little people, including this thing called Radio Digest for a while before it folded, and then also the Oregonian and a little bit the Statesman. So. But then one of the things I would do for KXL Radio, of all the crazy things, was this conservative talk news station. I wound up doing this crazy online blog thing called Party Crasher. And back then I had like really spiky blonde hair and, kind of Johnny Rotten kind of look, and wore these funky 70s suits. And I would go around to people's parties and pull bizarre pranks and take pictures of them or get pictures of people passed out, just write these silly narratives about it that were kind of exaggerated, but kind of not. A lot of times you didn't exaggerate anything. You kind of had to downplay it because there were girls showing their boobs, and I was making out with random chicks here and there and do things in closets.
You were living like the rock star, dude.
It was totally the rock star life. So I was like interviewing, by the time I get to interview like some of my gods, like Jethro Tull and King Crimson, and
oh, wow.
And this one Russian dude, Boris Grebenshchikov, who was like, it was like the the Beatles of Russia, and interview some of those rock stars. But I was also like writing about regular news stuff during the day, writing about the coast other times of the day, and going out to the coast a lot, and then doing Party Crasher. And so it was so much fun, but I hardly made any money at it. So anyway, Party Crasher kind of ended when I got laid off of KXL because KXL went through hard times. And then I just started doing the coast and just concentrated on the coast. But just before that, after I lost the Oregonian gig, and I had intentions of going national, like going to Rolling Stone or whatever, but it was just, it was just too hard to make a living at writing about music. And it was just a bitch. I was having an easier time writing about the coast and about other things, and so I bagged it. And but part of me wants to do it again. I started this online publication called indierocknews.net. Was hoping to, turn that into something bigger, but I got distracted the last few years. Now I'm going, well, I'm 56 years old. I'm not, I'm not as hip and cool as some of the other kids are now. I don't like hip hop at all. And I know I'd probably, in order to do something even about indie rock, you'd probably have to write about hip hop stuff.
Maybe, I don't know, man. I know that. Okay, so here's the difference of things that have changed. We had some friends that played the Paris Theater, which that in and of itself has gone through many different metamorphoses. Back when I first joined Henry's Child, it was my second show. And it was I grew up super religious, and I grew up super I just was not a man of the world. Let's put it that way. Oh. And Rich and I were like walking to a 7-Eleven or something. We'd like walk back to the Paris, and we were waiting for the doors to open for them to bring our gear in. And it was the first time I ever saw somebody shoot up heroin in the middle of the day.
Oh,
and I was like,
I have never seen that thing.
Wow. Well, it's, I can still see it in my brain right now.
Ow.
And then it became a sex club for a long time.
Yeah.
For many years, it was a sex club. Now it's become a venue again. Mm-hmm. And what they're doing is they'll have kind of like 2 rock shows in the day on Saturday. So they'll have like a 4 to 8 and then an 8 to midnight. And then from midnight is exactly what you said. So we'll start at like 12:30 and it'll be hip hop all the way till 6 a.m.
Whoa.
And so they have this big rotation. Now, I don't think a lot of venues do that. But one of the things that's been really interesting for us to experience has been the fact that the music scene, if you will, in Portland and Seattle is very oversaturated. So if you're not willing to play for free on a Tuesday night, there'll be 6 other bands ready to go
Yikes.
that will kind of do it. And so they look at other things. They look at things like what your draw is and how many people you can bring in and, all that sort of thing. And so it's been really interesting relearning this whole booking thing.
That's
and
harsh.
especially
Wow.
with all the digital stuff.
Yeah.
So I just send them an electronic press kit and see who responds and who doesn't. And if you're lucky to get on a show, you get on a show, and it's just kind of one of those things. It's really changed. And it's funny, you touched on another industry that just got blown away, which was radio. Which radio is really owned by just 2 companies now throughout
It seems like it. Yeah.
whole
it's-
U.S.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of that's a whole. I'm not really well acquainted with what's going on there, but I am aware that. I wasn't aware that about what you said about the playing for free thing. Such a world of difference what Portland used to be when I first moved up here. All these cool people were moving to this town from other places, and now they can't afford to. I'm sure now that living here is just so expensive. But back then it was cheaper. There were all these bands moving here to be part of the music scene, and it was so rich and full and vibrant. And Ash Street Saloon was going, and Cobalt Lounge, was going downtown, and the Ohm.
Yeah.
There was Key Largo,
Yeah.
and then it became the Ohm,
Yep.
and now that's like 2 different buildings altogether. And
I don't even
all
know
these
what
cool
that is
places.
these days.
It just hurts to sort of see it, and I'm not as apt to go out to shows now. I haven't gone to a show in I don't know how long. I mean, it used to be just an integral part of my existence to go out to shows all the time.
Oh, dude, we would play Thursday nights till like 2:00 in the morning, and I remember you being at every single show in Salem. I mean that it was a thing. So the remedy to that, what we've kind of chosen to, in a way, we've kind of chosen to take on is shows are now events. People just don't go out to shows anymore for a various number of reasons. I think that Netflix exists now, so you can just binge watch, which wasn't even a thing before. So you can binge watch anything. You can binge watch shows from the 70s if you wanted to. Things like Xbox and PlayStation Live exist, so there's just constant entertainment. And in fact, what's really interesting, and I have a personal belief, that attention is the new currency. So it's the same thing as websites. So like for beachconnection.net, I mean, what do you need for that? You need eyeballs and you need action. So people that click around, that read things, that give comments, that give you feedback and things like that. And so the paradigm shift that we've been taking on now that Henry's Child is kind of back together in this sort of close to the original incarnation is the idea of making things events. So what we typically will do is we're kind of looking at, like we played with Floater, and that was a big event because they were like, well, 2 elemental bands that haven't been together in 20 years are like playing again and that sort of thing. And so what I think we're going to do is we're probably going to end up putting out the record. That's going to be an event. We're going to have a video that's coming out that we shot already.
Cool.
That Andrew actually was very instrumental in putting together with one of our friends. So that'll be like an event. And these will all be just kind of like excuses to get people out of the house, come to live shows, and hopefully see new bands. Because there's certain places where we have enough kind of clout and pull where we can actually put bands that just we think are really great in front of other a bunch of people, which is a very very noble thing to do that we like to do, getting new music out there.
That's
It's
cool.
very cool.
So you guys' practice pad is in Salem, as I understand?
It is.
Because I was going to say there's some wacky history there. Because there was this band called Placebo Effect in Salem for a while, who I don't think they ever really did very much of anything. I was their de facto manager for a little while, and I don't remember doing anything for them. But they had this practice pad in Salem, in this office space above these stores on Ferry Street, and it was right near on the edge of downtown. I guess there's a convention center there now or something, or near there. And there was lots of fun, wacky stuff that went on there. This is back in the late 80s, early 90s. Crazy, bizarre,
I know. I was going to say, I thought
parties.
Placebo Effect. I remember seeing their name around, so they
Yeah.
must have been, I think, a little bit before us.
Yeah, they were definitely a ways before you.
I
They
see
had
you
full-
walking around with the cricket bat, being like the manager of these guys. Like a badass because you always wore suits, and you could just hide your cricket bat underneath.
No,
get
there
to
was
work.
There was no cricket bat involved. No, I think all I ever did for them, I when they just didn't feel like they were like 10 or 12 years younger than me or something like that, and I don't know, not quite that younger, but when they needed somebody to be an adult for them, and like maybe I remember I had to go up and ask for money for them once or something like that. But
Like at a club or something.
yeah, for their some gig, and they didn't want to do it themselves. Like, oh, okay, fine.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I've actually mentioned this several times before on the podcast, but the reason we're in Salem is because we're just spread throughout the state, and we've just we've kind of tried these other different things. Like I've tried to play music up here, and it just kind of didn't work out, and whatever, right? And so it ends up two things. Number one, rent's a lot cheaper in Salem than it is here. Number two is everybody's spread throughout the state. So now that Andrew's back, he lives in Eugene, so that's the furthest, and then I'm the polar opposite where I live in Portland. So I live a couple blocks from Emmanuel Legacy Hospital, kind of in Northeast. And then Rich lives in Lebanon. Jarrett's playing with us, and he lives in Corvallis. He was kind of my doppelganger. It did sound for us. So when I had long hair, he had long hair, and we kind of got confused for each other occasionally. And then our drummer is the youngest guy. He's 35, and he's up here in Portland.
Oh, I see.
So we
I was wondering who the drummer was.
commute together. Yeah, we've had some drummers spontaneously combust, just like Spinal Tap.
Nice.
But no, and so it's getting people out for shows, for events, and things like that. I mean, it's really changed.
Yeah.
And I think you'd be a good music writer again. You did it for so long, dude.
It would be kind of fun. I just sort of feel out of touch, but I want to write about the bands that I like. Like I love the Horrors, and I love Aurora, and Mew, and Manic Street Preachers. And I just kind of, when I do this, I just want to write about the kind of arty indie rockers that I like, and on a national level. I don't want to do locals. I loved being a part of the local scene. It was so much fun because it felt good to promote these local guys, and to write about like a local gig here in Portland or in Salem, whatever, and then see a whole bunch of people turn out for it because you'd created a buzz, and that was fun. And I had a good time with those guys, and like people like you, and I had a blast, and just don't have the same interest in the local scene. Probably because if I write about national bands, there's just going to be more money in it.
Sure,
when it comes to a website, you're going to have more eyeballs. You do a nice, nice little interview with Manic Street Preachers, you'll get people all over the world checking you out. So
Totally.
those kind of hits are important, but the irony is, it's like, how do I get the website up to a point where I can be big enough for them to let me interview Manic Street Preachers? And so it's like this catch-22. I can't be big enough without talking to those guys, but I need to be big enough to talk to those guys. It's like, so it's a lot of work. I'm not sure how that's going to happen, but so we'll see.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming in today.
Hey, thank you.
Appreciate it.
That was fun.
Best of luck, Andre.
Thanks. You too, man.